Senator Leyonhjelm.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President. Today I'd like to address an area of public policy with a far-reaching and pernicious effect on the cost of living for many Australians. A policy that is making households poorer, industries less competitive, stifling jobs and imposing a $29 billion burden on the Australian economy. The policy to which I refer is the Renewable Energy Target, RET. The RET is a generous industry assistance policy that rivals the largesse of the motor industry gravy train and has the inevitable consequence of driving up power prices through government-mandated customer subsidies. The policy and its continuation are unsurprisingly promoted vigorously in the renewables sector at the expense of ordinary Australians. In June 2009, then Minister for Climate Change Greg Combet, in his speech introducing the Renewable Energy Electricity Amendment Bill, said, "The Renewable Energy Target Scheme is part of the government's economically responsible approach to tackling climate change." Surely, using the words economically responsible and renewable energy target in the same sentence must be an oxymoron. A report from the accounting firm Deloitte, issued in July, entitled "Assessing the Impact of the Renewable Energy Target," is unequivocal in its conclusions. It notes that completely abolishing the RET is projected to increase real GDP by $29 billion in net present terms relative to the RET continuation. It also said households are projected to gain the most, given the twofold impact of higher real wages and the relatively larger reduction in residential retail electricity prices. Over the last decade, since the introduction of the RET, Australia has gone from being historically one of the cheapest energy nations to now having 4 of our states in the top 6 internationally for expensive household electricity. Only Denmark and Germany, both heavily reliant on wind energy, are more expensive. Australia's residential electricity prices in 2007 were much the same as in the US, but now are more than 120% higher than those of many Americans. No green energy is free, or even the same price as electricity generated by coal or gas. It is beyond doubt that electricity produced by wind turbines is more than twice as expensive to produce. The more wind energy we encourage, the more we will pay for power. Under the RET, electricity retailers are forced by the government to spend millions of dollars buying renewable energy certificates from wind energy companies. The electricity retailers, of course, do not wear this cost. It is passed straight on to consumers via their bills. It is this last point that highlights a fundamental misunderstanding of who pays the cost of renewable energy. It is clear from the public commentary on this issue that many believe the government is paying the subsidies to energy companies, and they are happy for the government to support renewable energy as long as they themselves do not have to pay for it. Apart from the fact that on any issue government money is taxpayer money, the cost of renewable energy subsidies are passed directly to customers, but are not shown separately on their bills, so the subsidy is hidden from scrutiny. Household energy poverty, defined as when 10% or more of disposable household income is used for energy needs, has become entrenched in Australia, creating a new underclass whose daily choices are now dominated by electricity price signals from a government-manipulated energy market. Politicians are quick to claim the high moral ground in defending the position of working families, battlers and the disadvantaged, and these are certainly the groups most affected by higher electricity prices. The hypocrisy of Labor, the Greens and Clive Palmer is exposed when they each claim these groups are their core constituency, while vigorously opposing any suggestion of changes to the RET. Clive Palmer claims to be a friend of the battlers, but at the same time insists they can continue to be compelled to subsidise the wind industry, by far the largest and noisiest beneficiary of the RET subsidies that line their pockets while emptying the pockets of the battlers. We cannot produce ever-increasing amounts of expensive wind power and not expect electricity bills to keep increasing. It's as simple as that. To pretend otherwise is duplicitous. Our nation was built on the gold boom, agricultural exports, and cheap energy. Sure, the world has changed, but the fundamentals have not, and energy use drives the economy even more so in this modern age. The Liberal Democrats are opposed to industry assistance that favours one type of generation over another, and opposed to the perverse outcome that sees the least well-off in society subsidising the solar panels of the affluent. And we are opposed to the massive transfer of wealth, $17 billion over 15 years, from Australian electricity consumers to multinational energy companies via subsidies. Those who support the idea of expensive electricity for minuscule environmental benefit need to face the reality that the RET is very inefficient. According to the Productivity Commission, the scheme abates greenhouse gas emissions at 4 times the cost of the now defunct carbon tax. There is no doubt that abolition or very serious reform of the RET is required. Energy market demand is falling, according to the latest report of the Australian Energy Market Operator. A new generation will not be required to be built for over 10 years, but the RET requires at least $10 billion of investment in renewables in the next 6 years to meet the mandated target. Either the renewables industry invests $10 billion into a declining market to produce a greater quantity of expensive electricity to meet the government-decreed target, or penalties in excess of 50% greater than the current renewable energy certificates will be applied, which inevitably will flow through to electricity bills. In either case, further substantial increases in retail electricity prices will result from additional subsidies for new wind energy or consumer funding of penalties imposed on electricity retailers because the target was not met. This is self-imposed madness. Like the carbon tax, the RET is a tax on jobs. Analysis by Deloitte shows continuation of the RET reduces full-time employment by over 5,000 jobs compared to abolition. This is self-evident given the costs imposed on industry from higher electricity bills. Some people suggest that present renewable subsidy arrangements should be grandfathered, with no new agreements entered into as a means of quarantining the escalating costs of energy. While this would draw a line under the cost of the RET, it would still see a $7 billion cost to consumers for years to come. The unchallengeable economic reality is that to restore a key advantage to the Australian economy, the RET should be abolished. The only other course of action to extricate ourselves from the policy black hole that is the RET is to make it a scheme that truly recognises all renewables in the energy market and cap the scheme at a true 20% of generation. Currently, around 12,000 gigawatt hours of existing hydro generation that predated the RET scheme is excluded from receiving renewable energy certificates, with a large portion of this hydro generation capacity located in Tasmania. Recognising the obvious, that this hydro capacity is the bulk of renewable energy currently generated, and including it in the scheme with the ability to generate renewable energy certificates would give a badly needed economic fillip to Tasmania to the tune of around $120 million per year. It is beyond dispute that retaining a RET scheme in whatever form will be a continuing serious economic drain on the country and the wealth of households and should therefore be abolished. However, if a revised scheme is to be retained, it should be more equitable. It is not in the best interests of households and business to continue propping up an inefficient and expensive renewable energy target via our electricity bills.